you're developing MSI for pyroprocessing and molten salt as a burnout. At Cary, MSI is being developed as a ship product. How different is it? Is it just size, or what's the difference?
I think the Cary people should be working on the pyroprocessing and transmutation of TI using some nice advanced reactors, including MSOs, because they're already working on it. Long time ago, and for example, it's what we call the batch reactors. But we recall in the past 5 years, the first regime, they tried to phase out nuclear and, in a sense, kill the nuclear industry. So all the research activities at Cary actually halt. But in the academia, I think we should be moving for some more sustainable, futuristic nuclear fuel cell. That's why I am proposing advanced reactors, including molten salt. And then the pilot technology, which was under development here in Korea a long time, and I think we are pretty much close to technical application, again in collaboration with the US. That is why I am, proposing those kind of ideas to you today.
Yesterday we talked about, I know some of you were at our conference in Seoul, but yesterday we talked about SMR and how we can collaborate in SMR areas. And Milt had especially you presented some case on an SMR collaboration. So would you like to sort of start off and brief us, remind us?
I think it was very interesting, especially the KHMP presentation, when you talk about the benefits of simplification. But I think the other benefit of overcoming economies of scale is you need to have fleet economics, right? You need to build very large numbers. And so you showed the possible market size from actually our Canadian SMR roadmap, so I know where those numbers came from. But it's really, that's where, to me, the most important collaboration is. It's getting customers together to develop this series effect so that you can establish the manufacturing and the preparation of all the materials in a way that would be most economic. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on how you can best collaborate and start to really develop the market to make sure you have the customers, because the objective is not to go from project to project to project, right? It's to build a series is to treat it more like a product and have a series effect. I'm curious as to your opinion.
You should have some ideas.
Well, this is my personal idea. What I'm thinking about is inviting private companies, big private company here in Korea to nuclear industry. Well, as you may know, this Korean nuclear industry, the industrial structure was closely organized by monopolies. Each part only one company, fuel only one, engineering only one, utilities only one, only sole company responsible for those areas. It is very efficient for our domestic needs. Sometimes I feel it has some limitations and constraints to export and exploring foreign markets. And recently I have some experience with working with Hyundai Engineering. They are engineering companies. They are not so experienced in the nuclear area, but they are very experienced in this chemical engineering process, and they have lots of their partners and customers in the outside of Korea. And we had some business with them selling this, let's say, high temperature gas cooled reactors. And they approach their customers. They are mainly chemical companies for heat use, carbon-free heat. And I found where those markets cannot, developed by KHMP or CAPCO. They already think about utilities. So, based on that experience, I thought, well, we should invite Korean private companies who are already, big market shares in related areas in foreign market. Unfortunately, so many Korean private companies, they really rush on those SMR business. I met most of them. You can just name it. Samsung, Hyundai. Only exception is Lotte. They didn't came to me. Most of big companies in Korea, they have so much money on their, bank, and they really, they couldn't find out any, promising investment areas. So they're really eager to find out new business area, and they think SMR could be one of the options. That's why they just go to the United States to invest. Why that happens? Let me tell you. Well, in the very beginning, yes, it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. One of the highest staffs in the Tucson heavy industry at that time, now Tucson Enerbility, he asked me, well, we just consider the invest on the new scale. What do you think about that? And I told them, well, this government is not so friendly in nuclear industries, and at least you are a private company and you should survive. So as you like it. I don't want to bother you if you have money and if you collect money from this financial sector in Korea, Yeouido, in Seoul, then why not? You can just go to the new scale and sell, invest your money, and you can get some right to supply your component. That's the things going on. And after that, GS and Samsung, they also invest on the new scale. And quite similarly, Hyundai Engineering, they came to me. We want to invest on the SMR. Why not Korea? Well, government is very hostile at first. And second, the market is too small. They want to invest bigger market. And Hyundai Engineering, they invest on the USMC to develop the high temperature gas cooled reactor, exactly similar way. They joined as USMC as a strategic investor. And they put their money and they got some shares on the USMC. And also they got some right to join their Chalk River project as an EPC provider. So, and my boss, the president of Kerry, we met this morning. He asked me, well, KHMP and Kerry here in Korea, we boomed up those SMR business. And why most of companies just go outside of Korea instead of investing on KHMP and Kerry? The answer is I already mentioned. This market is there, and they have some sort of recovering their investment mechanisms. Where you have these, if you have companies in the SMR business, then you can just publicize your stocks, and they can just sell it. You see, those SMR business so popular outside of Korea, and they already got some capital, gains from their investment. Well, even it is not materialized. So I think my idea is we should invite these private companies who are interested in join those nuclear business in here in Korea as a strategic investors. It means they want to expand their business area to the nuclear area. Some companies, some engineering companies want to join and some manufacturers, they want to substitute Busan abilities and some others. So I want to invite those private companies and I want to make some sort of competitive suppliers in Korea. And that is my idea. And when I invited to the government this kind of discussion, I already told them, you should do this, you should do this. Otherwise, you have no, you cannot create any meaningful SMR market here in Korea.
So do those investors see the U.S. as a bigger market or a better market?
Both I think bigger market, and maybe when was the 2 years ago? We have the SMR meeting in the winter with the president of KHNP. When was last year? That's 2 years ago.
Oh, you mean HDC?
Yes.
Yes, last year.
Last year. Last December, we met some utilities in the United States who are interested in the SMR business. And one guy, maybe he is a CFO from Tennessee Valley Authorities. And he told me, and we have some short discussion during the lunch. And he told me, well, we don't need any kinds of innovative reactors. We need electricity. Yeah, that's exactly what they want. And I asked him, well, what is your prospect of your think about this SMR future of SMR business? And he told me, well, his CEO of TVA, he has some, make an announcement on this, your Congress, your parliament. And yeah, he told me maybe SMR business will start with this LWR-based SMR in the near future. And we are considering invest on those LWR SMR. That's what he told me. And I think probably, yeah, that is true. No one wants to be your first one, but once, if the first comer succeed, and everybody just follow that, I think so. So maybe we don't take all first, or we had some discussion how many survive in these SMR markets. Probably less than 5, I think. Yeah, less than 5, I think. So the first comers have big opportunities to win those markets. So that's why we are speed up all those development. We want and maybe 2 or 3 companies from the States, maybe 1 from Europe. That's my wide guess.
Anybody? Any other comments? I mean, Dr. Im, you are soliciting funding from the private sector for SMR development, so Dr. Kim does not have to worry about his development next year and the year after.
Well, he's a real pioneer in this developing MSR project in Cary. And his proposal was, it's almost 90% secure. It's not officially started, but it's almost done. And next year we will start. That is, it's called innovative challenging programs. And not only for the nuclear, but all kinds of areas, innovative ideas. And it's kind of grant. You don't have to require any concrete research. It's just a challenge. So he started with the government fund. And we have some discussion with those shipbuilders, like Samsung, Hyundai. And most of them, they are very interested in using those nuclear propelled ships, containers mainly. And we have some problems too, during the discussions. Well, for example, like they have a big container ships, like let's say 100,000 TEU, and it costs about the 1,500 Korean. How can I translate? 1.5 billion. No. 0.15 billion US dollars for one ship. And we roughly calculate those, how much does it cost for those MSR? It's 0.5 billion. So it means once you install those MSR on the ships, the cost is double. And the question is it, do you still need that kinds of expensive ships? The answer is yes and no. If those carbon limitations is very heavily imposed, probably they need that kinds of things. International maritime organizations, they ask this 50% reduction from all those ships.
Wouldn't it be cheaper to make the synthetic fuels from nuclear power on shore?
That's right. There are some different ideas, you see. So that you can produce hydrogen and you can use the hydrogen engines. You can use the ammonia. And they also search all those possibilities. And I asked this CEO of Samsung Heavy Industries, why do you want to invest on this nuclear project? And well, he told me, well, frankly speaking, I don't want to be the first one in the shipbuilding companies to invest on the nuclear. But as an insurance, I need to join those projects. If competitors in the Europe or Chinese shipbuilder, someday they have to come up with those nuclear propelled containers, carbon-free containers. And what should we do? That's his worry. And so he wants to get some insurance from those investors. That's
Actually,
Sorry, I was just going to say on that same issue, that's where there's a need for a commercial study, right? There needs to be a study to say what's more economically effective. Is it to build a nuclear engine to put on a ship, or is it to create synthetic fuels with nuclear on shore to drive a ship? And the reality is nobody's done that study yet to really try and figure out what's the best model. That would be a good study for you to do.
Yeah, we will do that. We will do that with the Samsung Heavy Industries, and we have some teams. And let me finish that short. The idea is, let's say, just changing those engines with the existing ships is not profitable. It's not economical. Let's say 100,000 TEU, they're one of the biggest container ships in the world. That's not enough to, it's not big enough to install the nuclear engines. If you make a ship bigger, then you can get more bulge of nuclear engines. So I asked them, well, you just change your mind. First you should aside bulk of your ship, then we will make nuclear engines at that size. Then we're in the container market, the bigger is the cheaper. Only the problem is propellant powers. So they told me, well, we can make a bigger one. And one of those advantages of using nuclear propelled engines, you can speed up. So those Pacific Oceans, those container ships usually using 20 knots. And based on those Samsung's calculation, they can increase those speed up to 35. So you can shorten your delivery times. It's another business. So if we really want to use those nuclear propelled containers for escaping from those complex regulatory problems, maybe you can build mobile harbor on the public sea, and you can share those big container those to the small ships. So that's you need some creative ideas to introduce those new markets. So that's what I think about.
Well, regarding the cost of nuclear propelled ship and versus the ammonia production and then ammonia propulsion. Actually, I was told, I met CEO of Seaborg. Maybe you heard about Seaborg, right? Seaborg Technical from Denmark, Danish. He told me they did some study about the cost, cost and then analysis. They did the ammonia production and then utilization of this ammonia to propel ship versus nuclear propelled ship. And the conclusion is obviously direct propulsion is not very, beneficial. Anyways, that is their finding. I don't see any, open document about that, but it looks like they did some serious studies. That's one point. And Dr. Nguyen, you mentioned for successful deployments of the SMR business. Yes, we need so-called economy of activity. We need many customers and many units should be deployed. Right? Otherwise, the respective cost person cannot be achieved. So in that sense, here we are discussing possible collaborations between US and Korea. I believe there is no simple collaboration because they are building their own SMR, and there are so many companies in the US looking into their own. We cannot push them to collaborate in this way, in their way. That's impossible. But very interestingly, as Dr. Ian mentioned already, many Korean companies are investing money in many US companies. It's sort of collaboration. But what I want to mention here for possible necessary collaboration in the nuclear industry between the two countries very different. Because, see, in the US, maybe you can do everything what you need, including the nuclear fuel and production and everything. In Korea, we have a very limited resource regarding the nuclear fuel. And as I mentioned in my presentation, the HALO is almost free in Korea. Without collaboration with the US, it's impossible to realize HALO-based something in Korea. I think that this is the area we need collaboration. And just one more. Maybe some people say the first successor or the first company which may be very successful in the first trial would maybe gain everything, but maybe I think that is not the case because look at the cell phone companies. There are many cell phone companies selling many things, their own products. Just like if NewScale could be successful or TerraPower could be successful in their first projects, now they are finding some nice ways for futuristic SMRs. But they don't take everything from the world. I believe there can be many other competitive and successful companies in the SMR, including possibly KHNP. Problem is how to make market. For them, the first comer should be very successful. In that area, I think we have to collaborate. We have to help each other. My competitor to be successful in their first trial. Otherwise, all company may fail. In this new area for the SMR, I think that this is very serious problem. That's my personal view, but I believe we have to think about this. So both collaboration and competition are necessary, very necessary. Collaboration and competition. Otherwise, no company may be successful. No company.
when it comes to either large reactor and small reactor, we are understand there has to be a collaboration. We talk about we have to work together. I think it's time that we should really talk about how, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday, at the concluding session, Paul asked a very good question. Tell us how we can collaborate. What can we collaborate? And then, Koreans can ask Americans, tell us how can we collaborate and what can we collaborate? So we can go down the items in the list and all this. So is that a time that perhaps we can at least come up with some list of stuff that we can collaborate? And I have one more question. It's a personal question, but if I was Trevor, right? And I only have one SMR product that I can invest in Korea. Should I do it at Molten Salt or ISMR?
Absolutely, yes. And I have a question. I don't know who can answer my question, but recently we wanted to cooperate with USA to develop the SMR and to commercialize the SMR. So we met the CEO of the NewsCare, and we talked about the collaboration between two companies. But the conclusion is we are competitor. So, and then recently I met the top manager of the EPRI in USA. So, the member of EPRI is the utility in USA. She is negative on the future of the SMR because of the economics. She wanted to look at the US utility wanted to life extension rather than the SMR. So, so we don't know how can we cooperate with the US utility or with vendor. So how can you prospect the future of the SMR in USA, in the market side or economic side?
So this gets back a little bit to Dr. Lim's point earlier. We talked personally at TVA. He told you the story in the U.S. that we're just looking for electricity. Part of the problem that, at least in my experience, that we're dealing with here is nuclear is looked at as just another market commodity. As long as nuclear stays in that lane as just another market commodity, it's probably never going to get traction in the U.S. I think one of the areas that and this is non-technical, that is, I don't think Korea has a problem with technology. I think you've got a great technology. Maybe the U.S. does as well with NuScale. But until we rebrand nuclear power as not just a market commodity, but a national security issue, until we rebrand it and then find common ground for collaborating so that we can reach developing economies with it as allies, I don't think it's really going to get a lot of traction in either country. How is it seen in Korea? Do utilities have the same response as the TVA person? We just want electricity no matter what. We're competing with natural gas, subsidized renewables, and oftentimes, I think gas is a little more expensive over here than it is in the U.S. So maybe nuclear has an advantage, but we are still, besides the anti-nuclear crowd, we are still struggling to get nuclear power back to what it was in the 50s in the U.S. It was first and foremost an issue of national security. It was not a market commodity back in the 50s. Part of what I think we should work on together is rebranding nuclear power as what it was originally intended to be. That's not a technical issue, but I think it's how we soften the beachheads so that we can get the technology ashore.
I think, I think that branding is absolutely the right point in terms of creating markets. But I also think that that branding process can be a bit of nuclear is designed to solve a particular problem that it's uniquely suited to solve. And so when you look at marine propulsion, what else is going to do that? You know, or when you look at the hydrogen economy and the volumes that could be, we're not going to get that with wind and solar creating hydrogen. Desalination is another one. So I think focusing on the applications of the technology to solve unique problems starts to be a way to position nuclear relative to other things that also produce electricity. And I think the volume is obviously a big one. But when you get into these applications, right now, unfortunately, I think most of the people in the SMR community or advanced reactor community that are talking about this stuff, they're still talking about just their reactor in isolation. It could do this, it could do that, as opposed to providing an integrated solution for, you know, desalination or hydrogen. You know, I can offer the full solution. If you want hydrogen production, I can provide the reactor, I can provide the electrolyzers, I can build it all, I can operate it all, I can finance it. And I think that focusing on collaboration to design those project models is an interesting area, because when you look at some of these applications, there's lots of elements of that integrated project that have nothing to do with being a nuclear engineer. There's other ways to integrate industries into the process to help mobilize capital and all these types of things, which I think is useful. And I also think too that part of this is just when you look at these target dates for when technologies are going to be available. They just get 2029 in Idaho. Hitachi's saying at least now 2028 in Canada. That won't happen. These advanced reactor demonstration projects, 2028, those won't happen. It'll be later. But, you know, just round everything to 2030. I think there's a problem, which is just the scalability of it. Like, okay, once you've proven your reactor works, building one of these a year isn't very interesting. It's almost a waste of time. You have to go from proving the first to then mobilizing a supply chain and EPC and financing immediately to scale this, to do it all over the place. And I think, unfortunately, we're not spending enough time thinking about how that's going to happen. And so I know that's not maybe as exciting as designing new reactors, but if we can't scale this stuff fast enough, you know, a reactor that might be ready for commercialization in 2038, it's too far. You know, people need to solve problems now, and so there's a unique moment in time where, after all these years of efforts, it seems like people are interested in nuclear, and that's exciting. But if we can't start delivering lots of projects very quickly, none of this stuff matters. And so I think spending time with all the technological innovation is obviously very important, but the commercialization strategy, the deployment strategy, if we don't figure that out, all of this will fail. And so I think when you talk about ways to collaborate, spending a lot of time on figuring that out is important. Spending time on how we can combine what each of the countries and other supporting countries can do is great. But even on something like marine propulsion, if you put a reactor on a ship, where's it going to go? It's got to, you know, get into the jurisdictional waters of that country. So how do you set up a system to make this a viable thing to go all over? We need to spend time on that. We need to harmonize regulations. We need to get the regulators to not just sit in an ivory tower and not be helpful. And I think that's where countries can start to come together and say, we need to solve this problem. How are we going to do it? One country alone isn't going to force these changes, and that's an opportunity to bring together Korea, the United States, Canada, the UK, France, Japan, maybe a few others, to start setting up new international best practice. Because if we wait for the IAEA, God love the IAEA, but it'll take forever, and who knows what they'll come up with. So I think those are just some ideas for going forward that aren't maybe purely technical, but more just pragmatic of how do we really make this happen to solve the problem we're trying to solve.
Won't that require a coalescing group? I mean, there has to
Yes.
be some committed individuals that are going to do that.
That's what Gabby's multilateral workshop was in Las Vegas. That's where Dr. Lim, you were there. We, at that time, we were talking about exactly, we need to start coalition of willing. That means, we are just talking about design, but we haven't talked about anything else, licensing or marketability or nothing else. So if we just go by step, it's gonna take 20 years. Once you find the design, then you gotta go and harmonization. And so we were suggesting, just like this, we can start all at once. But design is one area, financing one area, IAEA, milestone type is one area. So it is one good way of collaboration. And as they said, it's not technical, it's not political, and maybe a little bit of financing, but it's not a big money. It's just, committed individuals who's willing to start this project. So that's a good idea. And my one question was, you said that you talked to John Hopkins and USDA and Coal Power, and they were not. It just seems like it's a competitor. There's nothing that two sides can collaborate. So that means at this time, all these SMR companies in technical areas, it's all competitor. So basically, the U.S. SMR companies want just financing from Korea. Is that collaboration? Or are we talking about technical collaboration, or what would Korea want to do with SMR companies in the US?
And how do you do that so that those companies are comfortable with the collaboration, right? Because they're concerned about the competition. The other observation I'd make is, why are you going to start with NuScale? They're the ones that are furthest along. If you want to start with somebody, start with the guys in the back, right? Who really need more help, right?
Well, and then if you want to build on Paul's original point, it's about who can develop the market the fastest, right? So you have the most recent experience of developing a newcomer country. They started from nothing in the middle of the sand to less than 15 years later, you have MPP. So if you think about, needing to build large volume, what would it take to get 20 countries in Africa ready to have SMR built before 2040, or 10 countries in South America, or half of the ASEAN nations? That's how we have to start thinking, right? Is what do we need to do to get people ready? And then, as you help get people ready, then part of that is helping them decide what technology to build. And that's where the collaboration gets formed.
That kind of gets to where we were actually at the end of the meeting yesterday, when we were talking about the necessity to really actually a large and sophisticated multilateral effort. That's a big project, and it would require, I think, probably the President of the United States to be really interested in trying to do it. But to me, it seems like an important
direction to think about. Coming back to the earlier discussion of kind of the market, you know, I'm probably the person here who's the furthest from either nuclear science or the nuclear industry. But you know, it kind of seems to me like, you know, David, you're saying, and I agree with you, you know, the nuclear is kind of viewed as a commodity, and our Korean colleagues, you know, are repeated the story about the Tennessee Valley Authority that just want electricity. You know, it seems to me like the place to start, and it's not an original observation on my part, is with customers who want more than electricity, right? You know, they want something else. They want security, reliability, something that can run for a really long time. They want all of these different ancillary services. They want to operate in a remote location. We've touched on all of these discussions already. We talked yesterday about the military, and military bases. And I guess it seems to me like the place to start is thinking about customers who aren't going to be utilities. Actually, the utilities seem like they're the wrong place in some respects to go, at least initially. And again, you others, you know the business side of it much better than I do. But certainly in the United States, you know, if you have utilities who just want electricity, and our whole electricity market system is set up in a way that doesn't really reward any nuclear's unique characteristics, then it seems like you have to look somewhere else. At least to get the ball.
I mean, back in the beginning of 2018, I think, Bill, you were at it, when I was still at Cowens, we, at PDAC, we did a conference on SMRs and mining. And, you know, we had technology vendors come in, we had people from the mining industry come in. It was fascinating because the vendors want to talk about all the neat things their reactor can do. And the mining companies said, look, it's very simple. We operate in difficult locations. We got to truck in our fuel. It's diesel. It's expensive. It's unreliable to get there when we have bad weather. The government is going to tax the hell out of us because it's not green. We just want your reactor on our site, and all we care about is, does it produce electricity? And if I needed to open the mine on this date, will you be ready? I don't want to operate it. I don't want to own it. I just want it there. And that's all you care about. You just, you know, and you can extend that to the oil sands in Canada too, right? Where they're saying, you know, it's clear that we're still going to need oil. We need to clean up our business. But what can you do for me now? And no one really has an answer to that. So it's, when can you give me the thing I need? And I don't really need to know how it works. I'll assume it works. You build it, you run it, you deliver the thing that I want, and life is good at a reasonable price. It doesn't even have to be the cheapest price. But if it cleans up my emissions and gets me from being fined by the government, life is good. It's got to run all the time, and I can't find out that, sorry, we're 3 years late, you know, and we're 200% over budget. That doesn't work. That's what industry wants. So that's what you got to drive to.
I mean, I don't know how viable it is economically, but I remember reading, I think a couple of years ago, that some of the Russian scientific institutes were thinking about trying to develop a micro reactor that you could use for deep offshore oil. This is in the Arctic, actually, because that's where they would need something like that. And in current circumstances, I don't think they're going to be doing any Arctic oil development for a variety of reasons. But that was an idea that they were at least talking about also.
This is where it comes back, though, you had the right point, Mr. Lim, because the same thing on a ship. You can't say the ship costs so much, but the power source is gonna cost twice as much as the ship. And it's the same in mining. You can't say, well, it's gonna cost us so much money to develop our mine, and now the power source becomes the most expensive part of the development. And even worse than that, the approval process for the power source takes longer than getting the environmental approval for the mine itself. So those are the issues that have to be addressed, right? And they're challenging issues. But on the other hand, the economics, because I did a recent study for mines, and the economics are better because they also need heat, and they can use the waste heat to heat the mine shafts, saves a lot of diesel to heat the shafts. Again, when they use diesel, that means there's pollutants in the shaft, it's hard to keep the air clean. So there's a lot of positives as well, right? But that's why I'm saying it has to be much more market focused. And it's less important on which technology is the winning technology. It just has to work and meet the need.
Well, the other thing too, sorry. The other thing too, like your point about it has to be market focused. So many of the SMR studies are irresponsibly done because they basically say, well, here's the world's need for power. And if I capture X percent of it, look at how many reactors are selling, how much money I'll make. It's meaningless because then you say, but who actually who's ready for the reactor? Who wants the reactor? Like you can talk about how in the United States, there could be all these applications for SMRs, but we're trying to figure out how not to shut down perfectly good reactors because we've structured our electricity markets that don't support nuclear energy. Even though we built, what do we have, 90 something running right now, and we built well over 100 when you look at the submarine fleet over time. But we did it when all the markets were regulated. So part of this becomes, yeah, you could replace a coal plant with an SMR, but do the economics work? I mean, how, the coal plant was operating at this, like, what are you going to operate this SMR? So yes, it makes sense to do it from a technical perspective, but commercially, is it set up? And so I think that having more focused analysis, as Bill was touching on, about the specific, what is the real market, not the theoretical one, because it's really fun to think about all that interesting things that SMRs could do, but where are the real opportunities? If you read these surveys that people write about, all these countries want SMRs, but they're not going to be ready for 20 years or 30 years by the time they get their regulator. They don't have any money, by the way. Yes, we want an SMR, we need an SMR. We agree with you do, but you have no people, you have no money, you have no regulators. So what are we talking about? I teach for the IAEA a lot. Half the time, you look at the audience of the countries that are in the room, and if there are 20 countries in the room, only 6 of them are relevant. Because the other ones are like, you're so far away from this. You're sitting and listening and learning, but you're not relevant to anything that's going to happen in the next 10 years. And so I think that, focusing and maybe this helps too in engaging with Korean companies that want to get involved is like, what is the real business opportunity? What are we trying to do on what time schedule? So that they have a real sense of what the target market is over what time scale. Not to say, yes, Tanzania could use an SMR. Of course they could. They're not getting one in 20 years. So what are we talking about? And I think that's part of the analysis that has to get much more focused as to what the real markets are, especially when you're talking to businesses that look to invest. You can put reactor design after reactor design on the screen and they all look interesting, but like, which one can I use today? And that's what businesses care about. So
Paul, do those markets that we're looking towards, do they monetize the full value of nuclear that we are trying to sell? Because currently, I don't think they do. They don't monetize reliability. They don't monetize baseload. They don't monetize zero carbon. They don't monetize security. Aren't some things going to need to be done to shape that market? And I'm not saying it's skew the market, that's not the point. But for that market to reflect the value that we're proposing nuclear brings, the market's not going to monetize it without some outside.
And that's exactly, like, I've been in situations where people say, we want you to talk about finance. Okay, and I start talking about economics, and they say, no, you can't talk about economics, we want you to talk about financing. And you're like, I don't know what to say to that, because, you know, exactly your point, like, if we can't drive the economics in some way, even if it's just the government writes a check, that's economics too, you know? But something's gotta happen to justify the project. And when we've deregulated all these electricity markets, well, now a lot of the things that you just mentioned don't factor into that analysis at all. When you have regulated markets, you can make those judgments, you know, and assess that value. And so a lot of the value proposition isn't there, which then means that the financing isn't going to follow, which means you don't have a project. But that's where economics, financing, all the, and then, you know, I get back to, and we've had some side conversations about critical infrastructure. You know, when you look at what's happening in Europe right now, you just need electricity. It's just that fundamental. So are we chasing the lowest price of electricity at one point in the day, or do we want something that runs all the time at a reasonable price? You know, and when you look at some things that happened in Europe, where the Excelsior project, where you mobilized a lot of, you know, high users of electricity, and EDF basically fashioned a PPA from their existing units and sold it to all these companies. The companies weren't looking for the cheapest price; they wanted a reasonable price because they said, "I need to plan based on years and years and years, so I need to model something that I can count on, not what the price is tomorrow." 7 days from now, I don't care. I just want something that makes my business work. This is an input for me to make money somewhere else. And so I think we need to get back to sort of those kinds of certainties, which when you deregulate markets, you lost all control of that.
And that's just a little more important than what I was raising earlier about rebranding nuclear, because it does not fit the current market model for what we're proposing that its value is bringing. So
Well, I'm totally agree with you, David, your point. And my question is there any possibilities to create those monetized markets, which, you know, reflect all those values of nuclear? So, I mean, is it possible to subsidize the nuclear electricity, like the renewable stuff?
I'm sure there's always a possibility to subsidize anything if you get enough lift. But I think what maybe to answer your question, I don't think I've never seen any decent studies that monetize those types of values for something like nuclear. I think that the time's well past that we should do that. And I think it should be done. I think that's probably one of the places, one of the ways that we could collaborate is identifying what those values are and monetizing what those values are. We have talked over the past couple of days. I don't know if Korea does levelized cost of electricity calculations. I don't know. Maybe the U.S. and Europe have been down by most, but that what's used in the U.S. levelized cost of electricity is really a bad metric for evaluating or evaluating something like nuclear power. So I think that that's a space where we can collaborate if it does nothing but elevate what those true values are of nuclear. I think it's a contribution at least.
And I think I'd be very careful about using the word subsidy, because it's not necessarily a subsidy. If you want, you can design a market however you want to design a market. If the current markets just decide the way you're gonna do it is whatever is the lowest cost energy every 5 minutes. But as we're finding out over time, that provides reliability problems, or we may have certain environmental requirements, or you can impose whatever requirements on the market that society decides they want to impose, and then once you do that, you create a value or you create a regulation, and then the economics change. I mean, that's how things work. And, I mean, fundamentally, the one extreme is you can say, well, the market will take the cheapest, and if gas is cheapest and the most flexible, we could have 100% gas market in the United States, and if people think that's okay, that's fine. But if you think diversity is an important element to create energy security, or you think reducing emissions is important, then you have to add that structuring to the market, whatever the market looks like. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's subsidy, right? It's meeting whatever criteria and requirements society agrees need to be met.
Yeah, I know many people look at what TerraPower is trying to do with nature reactors in Cameroon. I don't know if many people actually listen to what PacifiCorp is doing. Wyoming is a small state. It means large land, small population. They're located, Cameron, Wyoming is a coal town. This is a small coal plant. But they would never use the power from the TerraPower reactor. The PacifiCorp is actually based primarily in Utah. The reason why they're building this in Wyoming was because it's a coal plant being shut down for good politics, good citizenship. But the electricity is being sold to California. And that's the market. So they saw the market, and the reason why that market's there is because PacifiCorp in Utah has huge wind and solar. And they sell all of that into California, and they're using nature reactor to back up the intermittent sales. So they're selling green power. So California thinks they're buying wind, but as we know, wind and solar is always backed up by gas. In this case, they're replacing gas with nuclear. And that's actually a market which I think is you're going to see a lot more. These big wind utilities are looking at ways to remove gas turbines from their system, because gas in the United States now is doubled in price. And for those of you who remember Generation 4 reactors and the NGNP, the next generation, that project failed because a lot of its commercial base were chemical companies looking to replace natural gas. They were one of the major supporters. And when fracking gas became so cheap that we were paying, $2-3 a BTU, million BTU, it killed the program, because they did not have it was not the electricity, it was the hybrids that was to produce hydrogen. That was one of the major supporters. So again, that's kind of when we talk about markets, finding out who you can sell to is really part of it. And I think PacifiCorp is, they're making a major commitment investment, and so they must understand their clients, particularly Californians. Which nobody understands. So I just want to add one quick thing, because I know we're running out of time. One of the areas which I personally have advocated for lots of years is that Korea in the U.S. really ought to be spending more time looking at safety collaboration and our regulators. And personally, I've had a lot of experience with HINs in the past. I think they're good. The TSO, the research division at NRC, they use labs, and for example, I know we've are going to collaborate here for years on the PGSFR. A lot of that is on code development. Those are areas where we can collaborate, because we all have the common goals, which is to find the safety cases for multi reactors. And so it's not a big commercial project,
but it's the sort of thing that you build collaboration on. And speeds up the licensing process, because that's a risk.
So that's bilateral harmonization of regulatory process.
Well, we've done that with Canada.
Right.
Multiple, yeah.
I think this issue was brought up in one of our workshops, and I was talking multilateral harmonization, and they said multilateral is too difficult. Bilateral,
Multilateral.
but multilateral is too difficult.
No, but you can do it bilaterally. The reason why multilateral is because there's too many players and there's too many differences. We saw that with the MDEC program at NEA. The MDEC program did not, I mean, it was very good, it still is good, but you'll never achieve complete harmonization.
Wasn't this harmonization of regulatory was one of the transition agenda?
Yes, I think so, yeah. And we tried several times and always failed in these those that I call international regulatory regimes. And it's I think that's the bottom line is always they said it's a sovereign right, and I will go my own way, as every country says. And I think those standardization and general framework for the regulations is extremely important for those SMR regions. So we fabricate so many units, so many modules in a short period of time, and we want to deliver as quickly as possible to 5 other different countries. Then we need that kinds of standardized regulations. And with respect to your comment, I think one of the most promising bilateral cooperation is advanced reactors. So it's not commercialized yet, and we can set common goals to achieve.
Yeah, very simply, the U.S. is not prepared to license molten salt reactors. It's not. I mean, the NRC is not prepared to do that. The companies that are promoting this are not prepared to go through a licensing process yet. We don't have the safety codes. We don't have the guidance documents yet. We are developing Part 53, which is a new regulatory basis for small reactors, and how you apply those and how you do that licensing. This is evolving, but clearly from just a code development aspect, there's a lot of stuff which nobody is ready to do licensing for. And so there's an opportunity for that to take place. And I think it's worth approaching both the Department of Energy and the NRC to discuss how they might be able to do some collaboration.
Well, this is not technical discussion, so I'm not going to touch on the technology too much, but as you mentioned, one nice area for the possible collaboration between two countries is for the advanced reactors, including molten salt or some others. And also the technology inclusive regulation. I think that is another very important areas we have to collaborate possibly. Now, getting back to the molten salt reactors, I think this is very, very promising, possibly promising technology. But one difficulty I see in the U.S. development pathways and effort is this: their power is leading, private companies leading, and the government is just backing them. So all the decisions are made by federal power, and at this private level, the government level collaboration is not their concern, it's not their interest. Again, for example, the NCRE project, molten chloride reactor experiment. This is very, very important to build a small, sort of a critical reactor facility in the Idaho National Laboratory. Again, it's driven by TerraPower. And there are only one international partner for us. We do carry and Korean entities. We do want to join them, but nobody welcome. Nobody invited, actually. I think we need collaboration for this kind of advanced reactor development. So this is one way we may discuss possible opportunities.
It's changing the topic, so I'll wait if people want it.
Yeah. So I was just gonna ask, oops. Oh, they were actually talking, okay, great. So what did you offer them? What did you say you would bring to the project? And did they say they didn't need it, or what do you, right? Collaboration is a nice word, but you need to actually bring them something.
Problem is they didn't meet yet. So they don't know what my partner possibly can give me or yeah, exactly. For example, I mentioned possible critical facility in Korea for the Korean modern software. We do need it. And you are building one in the US. But if we, did one, if we did each one and collaborate together, the synergy would be much bigger. But we don't discuss yet about those kind of possible, benefits and some better way to develop advanced reactors. NRC is not ready, KINS is not ready either. We do need a lot of discussion and a lot of collaboration for the advanced reactors. So I hope you guys may have for this opportunities for advanced reactors. I think the SMR, most of the SMRs in the US, all advanced reactors, even including NuScale. So again, that is actually what I want you to help us and possibly collaborate.
Yeah, I would just make just one simple observation. The very famous loss of fluid test conducted in Idaho, which really set the basis for almost all local accident calculations and everything else. One of those was the NRC. Okay? But the point being is that the regulator really needs to step up and become more part of these demonstration projects. They because ultimately they have to understand the technology in order to be able to review the safety codes and all that. And I'll tell you, that's a real problem that you have with KMC, KINS, NRC, even the Canadian regulator. They're all a little bit standoff because they've lost their technical review capability. It's degraded over time. So I think that this is an area where, honestly, demonstration projects, which engage the regulatory authority, are an important step forward in order to make these technologies step forward. So, but that's probably above all of our pay grades. But it's an important concept, and I think that's something where to kind of drive this as a policy concept that the U.S., Korea, Canada, and others really ought to be more engaged in understanding these demonstration projects and be active participants in them. Not as a technical participant with a hands off, but I mean it's a review process. So I just think that's an
just two quick thoughts. I think one, on coming to the US, I said yesterday, so I'm repeating myself, but to say we want to collaborate sounds nice, but there needs to be a concrete proposal because unfortunately, the people that you're talking to in the United States, you'll have the 1 hour meeting and then they go to the next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting. And there's not enough people in our beloved government that can really be involved in this. They're spread too thin. And so they will have your attention for that hour. And the next time they may have to think about it is 3 weeks later. And so trying to get the result you want, lead them to the answer as much as possible so that they can look at it and say, well, I like these 12 points and I don't like these two, and let's go forward. So like investing the time with whatever you actually want to collaborate on. Like, what does it look like? As was just said, what are you bringing to the table? You know, if you say, well, gee, build the whole facility and then we'll come and do research there, that's not good enough. You know, are you going to help fund the facility? You know, whatever, it's just things like that. How is it really collaborative? The other thing that I would say is, in a completely different thought, is when we were sitting in the other room, I asked the question, I said, you know, for the Baraka project, did Emirati students come and study the case? And the answer was yes. And I think the fact that because of what Korea has done to educate UAE engineers, that needs to be done in so many countries. And that is an area where you look at the two countries collaborating between university and laboratory programs in both countries. You can aggressively target, you know, you did it after you won the UAE bid, which makes perfect sense. However, now that you've done it, why wait for the next bid? Why not start the training programs much earlier? I think the collaboration could be sitting down with the United States and say, what countries do we really care about? And let's go after those countries and train those people and bring them in. Now, it's a funding issue, right? Somebody's going to have to pay for all this stuff. But the fact that you've done it and it's been successful, the fact that the U.S. has all kinds of educational facilities and that, you know, the institutional infrastructure is there. It's now really setting up the programs, because let's face it, I mean, I teach for the IAEA. That training is very superficial. I teach for FIRST. That training is very superficial. You need the whole next level of detail that can only happen if countries make that investment, like Korea did with the UN program, to bring people over and train them, not for a couple of days, but for 6 months, a year, a master's program, whatever it is. But now you've done it. That is intensely valuable, and it's something that the two countries could collaborate on. And if we start finding easy things that everybody can say yes to, it makes it easier to start dealing with some of the harder things in the relationship that get in the way of collaboration. So I would think of some of, as we say, the low-hanging fruit, and build that momentum so that then, you know, dare we say, the APR 1400, AP 1000 issue doesn't get in the way of everything.
Is this different than the first program? Or it's like the expanded first program, starting from first program, or?
I mean, you know, like I said yesterday, it first is like it opens the door, but it doesn't do enough. And there are stories I could tell that I can't. It's just that countries get a taste of it, and then they want a lot more, and then there's nothing there. There's not the wave of the avalanche of programs and training and things that then follow it, which is what they desperately need. So you introduce, you know, I'll teach a finance session for an hour. What the hell does that do? I mean, you know, like you can't even do anything justice in an hour, and that's all you're giving them. Like what you need is weeks and weeks and weeks of sitting with people and working through it and having a real program that they actually learn how to do this stuff. And that's what's missing. So yes, first is great. It presents ideas. It shows that the US and Japan and Korea want to help. But it's a great idea that's woefully inadequate. And there's nothing next. We need the next.
Yes, yeah. There were some concrete ideas that's not technical or political. It's something that maybe we can start putting bullet points, numbers down. And it is true that we should start talking about things that we both say yes, rather than, well, I don't know, that's too difficult or whatever. And everything starts with relationship, right? It's a human relation. So whether it's a big or small, I think with the collaboration and all that, everything has to start with partnership, relationship, building network, and building trust. So meeting like this where we can talk frankly, I think it's been very productive because we learned a lot about, Korea's SMR programs, and we knew about it, but not as to this extent. And you did give us a list of things that we need and how we want to do it. So we take back home some of our homework, and hopefully when we get together next time, we can develop from what we discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.